Right then, so the A2C of C, you're looking at the course and you're thinking, I want to do that. It looks like a good thing. It's something I want to do. Okay, so first things first is you've got to ask yourself, you're going to fly commercially or hobby. If you want to fly hobby, I suggest you check out the Article 16 versus A2C of C video. Okay, so have a quick look at that maybe as well, because that might help you make your decision. Now, the A2C of C, what's involved, what's it like, is it easy, is it hard, what's the exam like, how does it work? So, how does it work? Well, in the current climate, the CAA is allowing the RAEs to do this all remotely. So you will do this at home. So you will sign up to an RAE. Which one's best? They all do a cracking job. I'm just going to say as much as that. They all do a cracking job. Okay. I don't like putting one above another, even though I've worked at two. I still, and I could go, oh, they're the best of the best because I was there, or I do some of the lessons and stuff. I will always say they all do a good job. Okay, I'm not going to say that go to this one or go to that one or go to this one or go to that one. Go to whichever one you want. Okay, so yeah, choose one. Price of an A2C of C, pricing varies. The cheapest I've seen it is £58, but that's for the exam only. You get all the learning material free, which is amazing. Typically price is around £100 to £150. I wouldn't go to an RAE that says, oh, join us, here's the £100, but then if you join our family at £9 a month and they've got some sort of subscription fee. I wouldn't join that particular RAE, for example. That wouldn't be something, because you'll end up paying twice as much regardless. So just watch out for things like that. Okay, if you don't mind subscription, then fine, but otherwise I wouldn't do it. There's no benefit once you've got your A2C of C, and that's just honesty there, to be fair. Now, so you sign up, you'll get your login details. Now, there'll be two types of course, okay? And I think the best is the instructor-led one. So when I have done the A2C of C with people and taught them, it's instructor-led. So I am there presenting the course, okay? While I have a certain, we're going to go through like a bit of a script, you can actually stop me at any point and ask me a specific question on that point, okay? Where if you're just watching videos, okay, of people stood there presenting the rules, you're going to have questions afterwards, and unless you write them down, you may not ask the question in the end. Where if your instructor is literally at the other end of the Zoom call, for example, you can literally go, hang on, Mark, can you explain that in more detail to me? You can get that more in-depth explanation. It's a bit like these videos on YouTube, and lots of them. People will watch them, and then you're asking comments, and I'm having to come back later to reply and just clear up a couple of minor little bits, which were actually in the video anyway. Where if you've got the instructor, you can just keep, you can get a good repertoire. You can, and I like to have I like to present when I'm doing the course as a bit of fun as well, okay? While there are serious subjects, you've got to have a bit of fun as well, because if otherwise it is death by PowerPoint, and death by PowerPoint's never very good for anyone, to be fair. So, you can have presenter-led, which I think is the best way to do it, okay? I believe that's the best way. However, there is a lot to be said for the pre-recorded videos where they will literally just keep telling you the rules, blah, 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 blah. And I don't know how much humour is going to be in there. It would be like watching someone that's deadpan. and they're going to be like really level and not going to say anything at all that's going to be interesting. And it's just in the A2 CFC you can fly an aircraft between 500 grams and 2 kilos in the transition period, and the distance of horizontal separation will be 50 meters. Oh God, shoot me now. So, you know, that's it's not an impression of anyone, by the way. That's just me being me. That's what you get if you do the course with me. No, seriously though. So yeah, I think there's you know, there's benefits to both, but I think the biggest benefit is instructor led. Okay, hands down. You know, and if that was to cost an extra 20 or 30 pounds, then I would still go that way, to be honest. That's just my humble opinion, don't have to take it. So you've signed up to your RAE, they've given you access to the login, okay? It shouldn't take, the A2 course is not that big actually, and I'm very tempted to do a video series. If you think I should do it as a series on each module, I could do that for you all and put it on here. I'd have to be careful because I can just create the materials quite easily, because it's all in CAP 722B. Okay, so CAP 722B has the subjects that must be covered. Okay, and this is what you want to know as well. What subjects are we going to cover? So what you're going to do is, there is a section on meteorology. Okay, so the weather basically. Okay, so there's an introduction, okay, to obtaining and interpreting weather information. Okay, well, let's face it, right? If you can't read a BBC app or the Met Office app to work out the weather, then you're already in trouble, to be honest, because it's one of those things. So, you know, weather reporting resources is one of the things that's talked about. Well, holy smokes, apps, you know, Google can do it for you all that kinds of things. Okay, how to read a synoptic map is not necessarily covered, but it's not a bad thing to know about. Okay, so synoptic charts are probably done. Local weather assessments, because we don't fly anywhere typically, because it's 500 meters or visual line of sight, if you like, you're not flying from one city to another. Do you care about the weather? So I'm in Lincoln, for example. I've said where I am, damn it. So I'm in Lincoln, for example. If I wanted to fly here, do I care about the weather in Nottingham, for example? No, I don't. I don't give a rat's, to be honest. It's not important. What I care about is if the weather's going to get better or worse during the day. That's all I care about. Everything else is kind of immaterial. You know, and it's about learning, you know, what weather is appropriate for your drone to fly in and stuff like that. And typical exam question could be actually, where do you find out what weather your drone can fly to? What are the actual limits for your drone to fly in what wind levels, for example? And the answer is, it's in the manual, it's in the user manual. And if you didn't know that, don't do the A2 CFC. Honestly, if you didn't know that, just don't go any further. Honestly, because it's one of the most basic things going. And if you can't even work that bit out, just, yeah, don't bother. So local weather assessments is part of it. Okay, we've then got effects of weather on the unmanned aircraft. Okay, so they'll tell you about wind, urban effects, gradients, masking and turbulence. Interestingly, turbulence is always interesting because you've all done that, I think, where it's been a windy day, you've walked behind a building, you can't feel any wind, you step out and all of a sudden you're hit by that wind. Okay, so understanding turbulence is a reason why GVC operators or operational authorization operators, or with the PSO, we walk around the area before we do any kind of flight, because we are, as we walk around, we're paying attention to what's going on with the wind. Okay, then you're going to talk about temperature and rain. Can you fly in rain? Where do you get the answer to flying in rain? What about icing on the aircraft? Okay, been a lot of that, and it's quite clear that people haven't got a Scooby-Doo about that. Visibility factors, you know, where you're flying, can you maintain visual line of sight of the aircraft? going to learn a bit about clouds. Now, learn about clouds, there's only one that you really want to worry about, and that's the QNIM. And to be honest, you're not going to fly under a QNIM, trust me. Even if your aircraft is got waterproof, you still wouldn't do it, or I wouldn't anyway. And they talk about lightning as a hazard as well. Now, interesting, lightning on the aircraft could be a problem. Now, back in the old days when we used to fly 35 megahertz, we have this long antenna, okay, you used to be wary of flying if it started to thunderstorm around you, because if it hits that antenna, you got this, like, I don't know, 3-4 foot antenna that comes out this long. It's that you know about it. You'll learn about IP ratings. That's the next thing you're going to learn about, and that's all to do with the water. Intrusion protection, like from small little bits of nuts and bolts to water and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's what you will learn about in the meteorology section. Okay, you're then going to learn about, your next piece will become UAS flight performance, or unmanned aircraft flight performance. Okay, so typical operational envelope of a rotorcraft and a fixed wing, interestingly, and hybrid configurations. A hybrid, I've not seen a hybrid yet that fits under 4 kilos and is usable, but they do talk about it and you should be learning about it. You can fly a fixed wing under the A2 CFC. There's a it is very interesting because it's 50 metres horizontal separation, where fixed wings and overfly, in my eyes, is less of a risk than a multi-rotor. But that's just my kind of thing on that. Depending upon what fixed wing you're flying, of course, and you know, if you're flying something like an EB, the risks are so minimal. But the 50 metres horizontal, from uninvolved people, would be a bit of a pain at times. But that's the way it is. So you'll learn about basic principles of flight. Sorry about the ramp. Operating guides, so flight procedures, basic drills and emergencies you will be told and instructed about. Maintenance of your system, so basic maintenance on your aircraft. Where will you find your maintenance schedule, timeage, do you think? Okay. Manufacturer's recommendations, funny enough, they might have something in the manual. And assess, is your aircraft safe to be flown? Okay, so, you know, if you've got a damaged prop, what do you do with it? Well, you break it, you put it in the bin, you put a new one on. It's quite simple, you know. And that could be an exam question. Do you fly with a broken prop? No, you take it off and you bin it. Okay. They'll talk about mass and balance, so centre of gravity as it's known. So consideration, okay, for the centre of gravity when you're adding payloads. Why some other aircraft you can change it about, some you cannot. On fixed wings you cannot have a rearward centre of gravity on a fixed wing, because if you do, all it'll do is it'll fly like that and just go like that. So never fly with a rearward centre of gravity on a fixed wing, just don't do it. It's dangerous. Multi-rotors, a little bit different. They can accept to a degree being payload out of centre, but you want the centre line. Got to have the centre line, okay. Some drones like the M210, of course, they do allow the gimbals. They've got 2 gimbals, one on the left, one on the right. You can change around, so you can choose, okay. So, but it's the centre of gravity is actually dependent upon the aircraft you're flying, okay. Batteries. So you need to understand a little bit about batteries. Memory effect is no longer really relevant. That's typical NiCad and nickel metal hydrides that had that problem. LiPos, to mine, I've not experienced it. I suppose it's possible for it to get a memory effect. But they talk about capacity and, of course, your C rating for the batteries. Okay, if you're using DJI stuff, you just buy the battery, put it in, and don't worry about it. It's a smart battery. It'll even tell you when it's got a problem. So they want you to tell you about battery functions, so charging, uses, danger, storage. Storage on LiPos, very important. Keep them somewhere safe. They do nasty things if they go wrong. Battery safety, how to prevent potential unsafe conditions. Keep the bloody things warm. If you're going out in this kind of weather recently where it's cold, Anything below 15 degrees isn't good. Ideally get them to 18 before you even fly. Okay, so same as your iPad, you know, keep it warm, otherwise it's just not going to work for you. Okay, then we've got the last subject is UAS operating principles. Okay, so this is visual line of sight, so keeping the drone where you can see it, so you can see and avoid. Okay, the decision process. Okay, stress and pressure from customers. Okay, occurrence reporting and investigation. So if you have an incident or an accident, you have to know how to report it and do the investigation. Yes, even with the A2CFC. Congested area operations, planning and prep, hazard identification, overflight of people, well, we know we can't overfly. Public and third parties, crowds and gatherings, you can't overfly events or groups and crowds. Medical fitness is covered, crew health precautions. So no alcohol, no drugs, no medication, and medical restrictions all will be talked about. Okay. Fatigue will be talked about. So flight duration, flight workload, outdoors and lone working. You know, it is one of those things. Those props can make a mess of you. If you get it wrong, because you're tired and you've just driven 8 hours to get somewhere to do a job and you're tired, very quickly things can go pear-shaped. Okay, and then finally, technical and operational mitigations for ground risk will be covered. Low speed mode function, evaluating distance from people, and the one-to-one rule will be covered. Although the one-to-one rule right now does not work for any transitional aircraft. That's the important bit. I see people have done the A2CFC and they keep saying, oh, I've got slow speed mode so I can do the one-to-one rule. You can't do it with transitional aircraft. Okay, that is important. You know, now the exam itself will be typically multiple choice. So the exam is normally done, so you'll sit and you'll look at a screen. It'll be webcam system. Okay, typically what you have to do is you have to be able to show the whole room. Okay, make sure there's no notes around, turn off computers. The instructor or the AI system, because some use AI, so if you're always looking down to the right, okay, the AI system will flag you that you've been looking at something. For example, if you're always looking up and above the screen, it will flag that as you're always looking at something. And they record your screen while this is going on. So they can see you, they can see the screen, okay, so it records the whole thing, like a bit like a Zoom call, it records it all for them, and they keep that as a proof that you've done the exam and you've not cheated it as such. Okay, I literally will record you on the Zoom call when I've done it. I hit record, we go over the exam, you get 40 questions, I'm going to say 40 questions, I'm not thinking of the GVC. You get 30 questions. You might get more, it depends upon the RE. Some might ask more, some might ask less. Questions will be random. The questions are not set by the CAA, but they are signed off by the CAA. Okay, so everyone is slightly different, no exam will be the same. Everyone typically has a question pot of say 60 or 50 questions. The question pot is randomised, so you won't get the same questions that your mate may have got the other day. Okay, so it will just keep randomising typically. You've got to get 75% pass. You get about an hour and 15 minutes to do it. Everyone typically takes about half an hour. Okay, they will give you time, so if you let them know if you're dyslexic, you can get extra time. Okay, or you've got problems, they will allow for that. So they do allow extra time for any difficulties you may have. It's typically you get free re-examinations, so just check to make sure that when you pay your money you get like 2 or 3 goes at the exam. Although I would say 99% of people pass first time. There's very few that don't. I have seen a few fail, but they're just getting the numbers in their heads a little bit wrong, or they've just not read the question quite right. If you read any of the CAA stuff, you've got to sometimes double read it, and same goes for some of the exam questions. Okay, just double read them, because they're asking one thing and they're leading you kind of down the garden path sometimes. So yeah, just read questions twice. It is it's not hard. Don't be put off by it. If you want to do commercial work, eventually it will be the de facto, I think. The GVC's got a lot more to it in the course, but to be honest, the GVC now, you know, they will, I think the amount of registered operators will start to fall. We're all discovering that the Mini is excellent, the Mini 2. You know, it's going to be interesting in a new world. Yeah, so that's it really. The A2, go for it. It's not hard, like I say. I choose your RAE carefully. That's all I can say. Well, carefully. You know, there's some great ones. I like the ones that kind of take the mick a bit. So, for example, Flying Pigs, right, is actually run by 2 police officers. I just find it highly amusing that Flying Pigs is run by, and they went, oh, we're going to call ourselves Flying Pigs. It's like, what? You know, you can tell there's a sense of humour there, and that made me laugh. It really did. I'm not saying all run to them, by the way. I'm just saying I found that their name amusing. Okay, and it was really funny. In my, you know, just in my head, it's just screwy. But yeah, choose your RAE. That all do a good job. You know, from Skytrain to UAV Academy, Copters, UAV8, and there's quite a lot of new ones as well. So yeah, it's interesting. Which one would I choose? Of course I would choose Skytrain, but that's just because I would. Because I teach there occasionally, or I do flight tests, but occasionally. But you know, otherwise, you know, take your pick. There's plenty of choice, like I say. Typical pricing, like I say, is around £100 to £150. But yeah, that's it really. I mean, it's not hard. Don't overthink it. Everyone gets nervous about an exam. I kind of get that from people that I've seen take the exam, and even I do, to be honest, even though I've done my A2 CFC and my GVC. You know, even my brain goes, oh, you know, but it's just, yeah, follow the logic. With any question, follow the logic, okay? So read the question and it's going to be typically the logical answer.